Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Stargirl. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So what I thought was really interesting is that Cindy's helping the team out without letting them know that she got the laptop. The fact is that she sent evidence that proves that the gambler was blackmailing, someone, and then they later on found out it was Artemis's parents, Sportsmaster and Tigress. And so I should really quickly, along that, when Beth found that out, I should talk about, I thought it was such an interesting thing with Rick, where Rick talked about the fact that his uncle left. And he doesn't know because, obviously it's it's kind of cool that your parents are proud of you for big, Dr. Midnight. It's what about your uncle and everything with the whole, being Hour Man thing. It's my uncle left. It's where'd he go? He's like, I don't know. And I don't care. And I think there's such a heavy level of the way he said that, and Beth can kind of tell he was still bothered by it. It's his uncle was not a good guy. His uncle did not treat him right. So, am I saying he deserved what he did? Once again, what Rick did to him last season, it's no. And that wasn't even on Rick. That was Eclipso. But it's right. His uncle was kind of a garbage human being. But for Rick, regardless of that, his uncle's all he has. Because of everyone else around him, everyone else in the JSA, despite their circumstances, still have their parents. Beth's parents might be overbearing now, but she still has her mom and dad, and they're proud of her. Courtney might not have her biological dad, but she has her mom in her life. She has Mike. She has Pat. And even Yolanda, despite the complicated situation with her family, she still has her family too. So I think that's really striking a chord with Rick. And I think that's why he kind of snapped at Cameron when he snapped at their teacher. Because that teacher, she's the one that kind of gave an olive branch when it came to Rick. She's the one that kind of gave him a second chance when a lot of people had given up on him. And she had even at one point, but then she kind of took it back and she was kind of a mentor to him. So I think outside of the JSA stuff, outside of Courtney's family and stuff, especially Pat, I think she's the only other adult that's really been good to Rick, especially having his uncle, so Pat and that teacher are the only adults that have really kind of been good to him. So that's why he took a lot of offense when Cameron was a dick to her. It's right, just because you're a rich snob doesn't mean you get to treat people however you want to. It's yeah, Cameron's going through some stuff, so yeah, he's snapping at people, which is there's a lot of parallels between him and Rick in that regard. It's right, they both kind of lash out when they're internalizing so much, but Rick's kind of dealt with a lot of his issues. Cameron's in the process of dealing with his. And I think it's so interesting, them kind of bumping heads. And it's you talk to her again like that, I'm going to come after you. And it's just sure, okay. And I think it's such an interesting time, and considering Cameron's really starting to come into his powers fully, at least a lot more so. At the same time, Rick is, his powers are so inconsistent right now. So I think that's such an interesting thing. And him just doing the dickish thing where flattening Rick's tire. So... And even the teacher's right, I get your intentions, but calling Cameron names, it doesn't solve anything. And Rick's yeah, I'm sorry. So just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, kind of lumping that all together at the beginning there. But I love Courtney trying to talk, it's right, we got to talk strategy, because Mike's oh, here you are trying to still suck up to mom and dad, considering the fact is that you're the one that kind of skips school and everything. She's yeah, I'm just trying to do a nice thing. It's yeah, we see right through you, Courtney. But the fact is that she's right, let's have this conversation about murder. And she's yeah, her mom was this conversation's a little too bloody for me for when it comes to breakfast. And I love that the entire Sportsmaster, Tigress, and Artemis all came over and just kind of hijacked the breakfast. And I love, he's come on, dig in. And he's looking at Mike, he's dig in. And it's just the most uncomfortable breakfast. And I love time and time again, you keep inviting yourself over. You're not even knocking, you're just breaking in. Stop. I love it. At the same time that's all happening, Sylvester's trying to check out Blue Valley, but it's not necessarily clicking with him. So I thought that was interesting. The fact is, him and Yolanda had that moment early on, which I even love that he's drinking a cup. He's oh wow, this is the best tea I've ever had. It's just yeah, the best in America. She's best in the world, I've been told. It's yeah, probably don't want to let him know, because it probably upset him knowing all right, she perfected the tea for the shade. So yeah, probably best he doesn't know that. But I love that she walked away kind of happy, being like, see, everyone loves it now because it is the best. I thought I just love that little continuation there. That's so cute. But Sylvester telling Yolanda that, right, the previous Wildcat would be proud of her because he was always kind of suspicious of people. He kind of saw people kind of for who they really were. Just, I think, kind of had a very pessimistic view to the outlet. And he's telling Yolanda it's a good thing that she's suspicious of Cindy. That kind of keep that up. And that's why later on when it was Cindy that came to him to tell him about the gambler blackmailing Sportsmaster and Tigress, I thought that it was going to be Yolanda because they had a bond or something, but it being Cindy, it was like, right, that made a lot of sense too, especially when she explains it's like, right, she was trying to reach out to him because like, cool, if I got Sylvester's approval, I get the rest of your approval too. And it's like, well, it'll also help if you stop lying. But it's like, right, yeah, you already suspect you, and it's like Courtney's trusting you is already waning, so you don't want to rock the boat by admitting like, right, I did kill the gambler, but I've been hiding and lying to you. The fact is that I took the laptop. And it's like, if she opened up about the reasons, which I still believe that the reasons why she's doing that is because whatever the Dragon King did to her, like, there are issues there, and now, like, she's probably, like, her powers are malfunctioning, or she is malfunctioning in some regard, and her dad's the only one who could fix her, and she has no idea, because the files she were trying to get into in the gambler's laptop this episode were specifically Dragon King files, so I think it has to deal with her specifically in his research. But I love that the gambler has the most dickish, like, oh, you put in the wrong bad. He's like, oh, sorry, you're wrong. Try again. And I'm like, oh my God. That's the most annoying thing of like, oh, you got the password wrong. I'm sorry. And just laughing. It's just like, and she heard, Cindy, who has the shortest patience in the world, hearing that over and over again. You can see how frustrated she is. I love it. But yeah, she wanted to try and get the team to trust her. And Sylvester's like, no, like, you're not part of the JSA. The fact of the matter is, you're kind of, what was it, like, you're a run-of-the-mill cheerleader in green spandex with daddy issues. I was like, Jesus, Sylvester! Like, that was some, like, it's, once again, insert the meme, emotional damage. It's like, holy shit. You literally, I mean, to be fair, she's a villain in your eyes. So you're like, I'm gonna cut you down. It's like, you're a grown man cutting down a teenage girl. It's like, but it's like, yeah, Cindy's kind of on that level of like, you're a super villain, so like, I'll cut you down, teenage girl or not. You're a killer. You're a bad person. So yeah. And like, you could, and I think it's almost ironic and poetic because Cindy cuts people down, both literally and figuratively, both physically and emotionally and mentally. She cuts people down. So for her to kind of get cut back and cut down, and even later on she apologized. She said, yeah, I went to Sylvester, but he's kind of an asshole. And it's like, yeah, it was super unnecessary to go that hard in the paint. But he's almost like, don't get it twisted. You're not with the JSA. Like, you're a bad person, so yikes. That kind of blew up in her face. But boy, oh boy, Sylvester going after Sportsmaster and Tigress, that, once again, I love the action sequences in this, like him going toe-to-toe. Also shows you how tough he is. The fact is he can go toe-to-toe with both of them by himself like that and handle himself pretty well. And it's like, I mean, to be fair, they didn't have like any of their, like, they didn't have any equipment or whatever. I mean, Sportsmaster picked up a bag. He's like, oh, hello there, old friend. So I guess he's avoided kind of picking anything up. Like, I mean, he was going to do it to the gambler, but I guess it's like, right, he hasn't full gone swinging for the fences, like in a more like aggro fighting sense in a while. So, because Courtney wanted to avoid all of this because she didn't, like, it's like, right, we better make sure we're right about them being the ones who killed the gambler beforehand, because it's like, right, we can't tell Sylvester because he'll go storming in, like, and Beth being like you, and it's like, there's too much parallel there, and her being like, no, like he did with the shade, but it's like, Beth kind of was right about calling you out for it, because you kind of have a tendency to storm ahead too. So, I mean, obviously she's continuing to grow as a leader, but I love that, like I said, that whole action sequence, it was amazing. I love it. And it's like, yo, the acrobatic element of that fight was so good. And I love that who was the one to break it up. It meant a lot. I mean, to be fair, Pat could get there faster than anyone else, but him being the one to break it up meant a lot because it was him standing in between Sylvester and them, and him telling him to back down and go home. And once again, he plays that "you're my sidekick" card. It's like he gets super aggro about that because for him it's like you've always been my sidekick, but it's like no, it's 10 years. I've grown, I've changed. Because for Sylvester, so much of that is still like fresh. It's like to him, it's like all that went down in the ISA like yesterday, and so he's calling Pat out, being like, "How can you defend these people? How you're just okay with these villains who murdered our friends, just like running amok in this town? Like how can you let that happen?" And Pat says like you need to be a better example because Courtney looks up to you. At one point in time, she thought you were her father. And he's like, why would she think that? It's like, you died the day that the ISA killed the JSA, was the day her dad disappeared. And she believed like, oh, like you were her dad. And it's like, oh my God, my dad wasn't in my life because he sacrificed himself for the world, especially when the staff chose her. It's like, right, that's why this happened. And she held on to that until she found out, oh, my dad's just a deadbeat dad who left. And obviously he came into her life just for a necklace so he could sell it. So it's like, yeah, she gave him a necklace. We haven't seen him since. And Pat's like, yeah, I laid him out because of what he did. But it doesn't change the fact that he's like, I shouldn't have done that. I want to be a better person for Courtney. Like the fact is, she admires you on so many levels because you are the type of person you're the type of hero she admires to be. She looks at you and puts you on a pedestal. Don't disappoint her. You have to be, you have to be a better person for her, like almost like a father to her. And it's like, I know you didn't ask for that responsibility, but it's still on your shoulders. We have to be better for her sake, because he's so caught up in, once again, he has every right to be angry because, like I said, it only feels like yesterday for him that the ISA killed his friends. But it's like so much time has passed and Courtney doesn't handle things the way the JSA handles. Like, she knows what they've done, but she's willing to give them a second chance because everyone deserves a second chance. That's what Blue Valley's all about, second chances. And so, for Courtney, they have to be better people about it because he's still struggling to find who he is outside of Starman. I love that earlier, that whole scene between him, Pat, and Zeke was really interesting where it's like, hey, he's trying to find out a job that kind of really resonates with him. It's like, he's like, I'm as qualified as everyone else from the JSA. And Pat's like, well, Dr. Midnighter is a surgeon. Who was it? Oh, Our Man was a chemist, and it's like, okay, lab nerd, no thanks. And the Green Lantern was like in an entertainment business or something like that, like an entertainment manager or something like that. And it's like, and that line from Sylvester kind of being like, oh yeah, the entertainment industry. Like, he said some remark about it. I was like, okay, like that was specifically like written because it's like, right, it's Joel McHale like saying that line. So it's like, it resonates even more him saying that. But, Zeke had this particular story that he kind of told about his upbringing. He's like, yeah, my mother left me with my grandmother and just said like, oh, I cried too much. And it's like, I never saw her again. But he's like, my grandfather kind of imparted something on me like, junk is junk, but salvage is different because salvage is something you can take and make into something new. And it's like, okay, he's like, I get a little self-absorbed, so I don't know, like, was that actually still about cars or was it like a metaphor about me? He's like, metaphor? He's like, I don't know what that is, but that's up to you to figure out. I was like, that was actually some like very sage advice he had given him, but I thought that was a beautiful parallel. Like, you get the metaphor that was going on there about like, right, salvage is different from junk. It's like, it's something that you can pick up and repurpose and make into something brand new. It's like, your life isn't junk that you're just, it's like, no, it's something you're trying to salvage. There are pieces there you can salvage and make into something new, reinvent yourself, find a life that isn't just about being Starman. So yeah, like going and blowing up a convenience store, especially considering the fact is too, you weren't even wearing a suit or anything. I mean, God forbid, who knows what the camera, like, you probably had to get someone to go in there and like hack into those the camera footage probably got destroyed because he did like burn out all the lights there with that final attack. So there's a lot there, but Sportsmaster and Tigress admit they were being blackmailed by the gambler, because there's a lot of stuff that they did, or because the ISA did a lot of stuff that they weren't involved in. And it's like, right, we've done stuff, and I love that they both look at each other almost like, yeah, and they're laughing about it. Pat's almost looking like, why are you having this no, like, don't be too celebratory about some of your past bad deeds. I even love at one point he was stealing like some steaks off something. She's like, put it back. He's like, sorry, old habits die hard type of situation. But it turns out the gambler stopped blackmailing him, and he in fact paid them back sometime before he died. So now Courtney was like, oh, because at first she was worried. It's like, oh, I thought he was turning over a new leaf. It's like, oh, he actually was. He was trying to be a better person for his daughter. So he was trying. Because Cindy kind of was like, right, basically like, which I still think is so interesting that she's not willing to give the other villains a chance, considering you want a second chance. So you being so, but it's also because she's so quick to point the fingers at them and try and lay it on their feet, because it makes it easier. It's like she's tearing them down so she can prop herself up. That's kind of like, which kind of is very Cindy move in general, but it's like not the best way to go about it, because she has a hard time admitting like, right, she wants to have friends, because kind of like Rick, even that's an even parallel. Like they don't have anyone. Like Rick doesn't have his parents. He doesn't even have his uncle. I mean, he has but even then, it's like I'm sure Cindy would still be like, but you still have the JSA. They're the closest thing to a family. They're people that support you and have your back. Cindy has no one like that in her corner. The closest she's got is Courtney. I was literally about to say Breck. I was about to like call the actress who plays Courtney. I was about to call her by her actual name. But Courtney's like the closest thing, and like I said, even that's kind of wavering to some point, because Courtney was like, yeah, you do that again, you're off the GSA. And once again, this is all that Cindy kind of has right now, so. And they, at least Sportsmaster also owns up to like, okay, I should also tell you too, I went to visit the gambler, but I bailed away because I didn't want to give in to like my urge, like fall back into old habits. So I didn't attack him or anything, I just left. And it's right, I didn't say anything because we were trying to like start over, and we didn't want to kind of draw any attention to ourselves as like any potential suspect, but it still ended up happening. Once again, I thought their big dirty secret, I should have figured that was going to be that now being the blackmail angle, but I thought the whole them helping Artemis, I thought that was them, but I guess no. I was so certain that was going to be their big dirty secret. It'd be interesting when we find out later on it still is kind of a dirty secret, but they probably would have confessed it this episode, considering they're putting everything on the table. But they might not have done that, because like if they did do it, they probably wouldn't admit it even now, because they still want to try and get Artemis on the JSA and give her what she wants. So there's that element to it, but the fact is they didn't own up to it that's still a possibility. But I'm like, it seems like they probably, so that whole like, the fact that they were here is kind of like the thing. Like, the gambler had nothing to do with them being here. And once again, Tigress is at least one of their connections, because they were tied to the gambler specifically, but they were also tied to ISA members as well, other ISA members. So I'm still going to keep that on the table, but I'm pulling back on it just a little bit until like the show's like, actually they were behind. And I'm like, oh, why didn't I stick to my guns? It happens so often with these reviews where I'm like, oh, I had this theory. I was like, maybe it's this, but then I'm like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. And then a couple episodes later, I find out I'm right. I'm like, oh, why didn't I stick to my guns? Either way, we'll have to wait and see whether or not there ends up being any validity to my theory about them being responsible, trying to like bolster Artemis and kind of help her chances with the JSA. Either way, Courtney also reached out to Cameron. He kind of reached out to her because he was like, right, I was kind of being a dick earlier and kind of ignoring you. They're in a very complicated spot. It probably makes things even more complicated because his grandparents saw Sylvester out and about, so that's going to be complicated. But when that was all said and done, Cameron and her like went for a walk, and it's like, right, we're not really talking, because she's like, right, take whatever time you need, but he kind of bails at the last minute, which she's not trying to pressure him. It's like, no, okay, like take whatever amount of time you need. And it's kind of sad that they're just never quite on the same wavelength, especially like this season's going to be the one that really divides them. That's going to be interesting to see. I think the next episode's really probably going to dive into that. Just from the 1 second scene I saw, it was like Courtney and Cameron. So I think that's going to become like the thing next episode. But we'll see. I really love the Paula and Barbara friendship. I love that it's like Paula's like, oh my god, that German chocolate cake, like it was kind of a hit, and now they want me to give like a speech at the Rotary Club. It's like, well, you know, talk about why you're like the Rotary Club. It's like, well, what do they actually do? And Paula's just staring off into this. She's like, actually, she's like, I don't know. And it's like, well, just talk about why you love Blue Valley and everything. And it's like that. And when she was nervous giving her speech, and Barbara showed up and was clapping for her, and Barbara being the only one, it was super adorable, and it gave Paula Tigress the confidence to keep going. She's like, I love Blue Valley. I was like, it's so cute. I'm like, I really like that friendship. I love that that's been a byproduct of this. I mean, to be fair, Barbara is the, like, she ends up being the one that kind of like, I mean, I think that's where, like, Courtney gets it from. Like, she's so much like her mom in that way. Because the way, like, Courtney's willing to give so many people a second shot, so is her mom. Like, especially, like, her and Paula. It's like, despite our history, it's like, oh, like, we're kind of bonding. Like, you know, two moms. And it's like, I hope they don't just become friends. I hope they become besties. I feel like that's in their future, and I love that. I think that's so cute. But I also love that she paid home dude, the guy who's kind of a dick to Barbara. Like, he's like, yeah, we have a friend to come. He's like, oh, is it Susan or whatever? He's talking about some other women. I'm like, oh, you own some asshole, like, stuff with some other people too. But she's like, no, another friend. And you're not going to be bothering her anymore. And the guy's just kind of scared. It's like, you have the right to be scared. It's like, yo. So it's like helping out her friend without letting her know. So I thought that was kind of neat. But at the same time, there's the whole Sylvester thing. You know, he wants to be a better example for Courtney. So he's like, right, I'm going to go investigate the trailer because there has to be something we missed. And we see that someone is looking at all the surveillance footage. I don't know. I guess they must have still, the camera near the trailer is still there because they never found it because a gambler did. But, so that's still intact. So there's still eyes on the trailer. So they must have immediately saw Sylvester roll up. And he gets attacked because he didn't take the staff with him because he wanted to respect the rules of their situation. Like, I don't think Sylvester's dead. I think he just got severely beat up. Maybe it's going to be harder to kill him because he kind of technically already died. But it might just be like the plan wasn't to kill him because killing him would draw even more attention. So maybe that's what that was. I don't know. It was just sad too because at the same time that's happening, Pat is making a suit for, to make Sylvester feel better again, to feel like he is Starman again, giving him the suit kind of being a first step. And Mike seeing that, I can't quite tell, like, I think Mike was like, there was like this almost half smile, almost like he was happy his dad was doing that, or maybe he just kind of feels a little conflicted because I don't know. It's hard to really say how Mike was feeling in that moment. Was just kind of like, oh, that's cool of you, Dad, or is it just kind of like, yeah, Sylvester's kind of like on some wild shit. The fact is you're willing to build him, get him a suit, but kind of won't let me do the superhero thing. I'm curious to see how that all ultimately ends up playing out going forward into the next episode. Interested to see where all this ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.